understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. It's episode 69. We are going to be talking about the word Valentine. What does that have to do with church history? We're going to talk about it. First, Dillon, I'm going to light this candle while you tell us, what have you been giving your attention to?
Well, first off, it's nice that you have a red candle for Valentine's episode and you're wearing a Valentine sweater.
Yeah.
What have I been paying attention
Wait,
to?
wait, wait. Can we just on camera quick? How fun is this? I got hearts all over this sweater. I wore
That's
it to teach today. My students loved it. Okay.
very fun. Um,
And wait, look at these earrings.
oh
I
yeah,
dressed for the podcast today. Okay, go ahead.
very nice. I've been paying attention to how debilitating a headache can be. I used to get, I guess I still do from time to time, but not as much as I used to, debilitating migraine headaches. And I have a headache today and I can't get rid of it, and it has been clogging up my day. And and so I've been paying attention to how something that can just be boop, dropped upon you can make it a little difficult to get done what you need to get done.
Good stuff. What have I been paying attention to?
What have you been paying
I
attention to?
actually don't even have an answer prepared. I don't know. So many things. I've been home, what, 10 minutes? I just got home from teaching, and I guess what I've been paying attention to today is how much I love teaching. It's so much fun. I feel like there aren't many. Let me just riff on this for a minute. We have such a negative culture where we give so much space for people to talk about how much they hate their job and um how like, oh, so and so was annoying today, or like, oh, this, oh, that, oh, my paycheck. There's so much space allowed for that. But when someone asks you, oh, how's work, and you love your job, I feel like culturally we don't have space to talk about that. So I actually feel like what ends up happening is I don't talk about my job very much, which feels weird because it's such a huge part of my identity is being an educator, being a professor specifically in that age group. And I just love it. I love it. I love everything about it. I'm teaching, one of the classes I'm teaching this semester is writing for the social sciences, which is upperclassmen, and that's always so much fun. Some of my students are about to graduate, so they're in that state of mind, but they like have passions and they care about, and we're just writing, like I'm essentially teaching them, if you want to get published in your field, this is how you do it. This is how you write it. Here's what original research is. Here's what the process is. Let's talk about publishers, just the whole thing. And it's so much fun. I'm teaching literature, so we get to talk about, I mean, it feels like a book club. We just get together, me and 25 students get together. Two of my classes are literature classes this semester, and we talk about what we just read, and it's so much fun for me. I love it. So that's what I'm
Great.
thinking of. Yeah. All right, Valentine. You ready?
Yes.
I can
We're
get us started. I'll talk about the word Valentine. Is that all right?
sure.
I know you have a headache. Feel bad. Okay, so Valentine, this derives, we're going to be quick about it because the story, I think, is the juicy part here. But Valentine, this derives from the Latin adjective that means strong, healthy, vigorous. This root, this Latin root, actually is where like Valentine is etymologically, linguistically related to our words like value and valor, right? And then it came into English from Latin, and this word stood alone, and then it became adopted as a Christian martyr's name. So we're going to talk about that Christian martyr and the Christian origins of this word. It's not the way to put it because Valentine is not a Christian word. It existed before, but how it came into the Christian world with Saint Valentine of Rome in the 3rd century. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so Saint Valentine of Rome, who were predominantly going to talk about today, would have been known as Saint Valentinus, Saint Valentinus of Rome, or Roma. And the interesting thing is, if you do any deep dive research on Saint Valentine of Rome, you will see that there has been two separate people that have kind of been merged to be like kind of one persona. So for this episode, we are going to focus specifically on Saint Valentine of Rome, but I do want people to be aware of that there is someone known as Saint Valentine of Turini. And Saint Valentine of Turini was a different person. And
he was a bishop from what is
correct.
Modern day. Did you say Turini?
Yeah.
I thought it was Terni. I did not know it was Turini, but whatever. Which is a place in Italy. That's not what it was called at the time that he lived. But what's confusing is he was also executed during the Roman persecutions, which is why he gets conflated a lot. There were two Saint Valentines who were executed from Italy. It gets confusing.
Right, and the interesting part is so Saint Valentine of Tierney or Tyranny. So, I might be butchering the pronunciation, but lived in the 3rd century. Was the bishop of Tournai, and was.
I could be saying it wrong. I'm not saying that I know.
It doesn't really matter. Someone who has a degree in
Italian
could correct us, and I'd be more than happy to be corrected.
To yield.
So both of these individuals, both Saint Valentines, both of Rome and Tournai, are from the 3rd century. One a bishop, one a priest. Now, if you were to look at images of Saint Valentine of Rome, who again we're primarily talking about today, you will sometimes see him with a bishop's hat, which is a mitre on, because these two have been conflated. But it's Saint Valentine of Tierney, which is the bishop from the 3rd century, and it is Saint Valentine of Rome, who was a priest from the 3rd century. So what do we know about Saint Valentine of Rome, whose feast day or commemoration day is on February 14th? We kind of have a good idea of when he died. So Saint Valentine of Rome died in 269 AD. He was a priest of the church in Rome, and he is presumably buried in the northern section of Rome in the city. There is now a parish church of Saint Valentine that is commemorated to him. He has his own church, and it is presumed that his burial place in this northern church in the city of Rome has his bones underneath the altar. That is the legend. Also from the 3rd century, if I didn't state that before, and Saint Valentine of Rome was martyred under Emperor Claudius II, and Claudius II was known kind of generally as Claudius the Cruel. So if you're,
I feel like all of those emperors were just deemed like the worst, just awful, right? They were all so terrible. But
yeah. So if you're a fan of Roman history, he died under Emperor Claudius II. So Saint Valentine of Rome, this priest who was serving in Rome, was known for a couple of different things. As I stated, his feast day is on February 14th, where we get our modern day Valentine's Day. In that we believe that he died on February 14th, again in 269 AD. And what is most interesting about him is that he was martyred for the faith. He stood up to Emperor Claudius II. He did not deny his faith, and therefore he was killed and martyred for it. He refused to state that he was not a part of the Christian faith. There are some more slightly historic, but possibly more legendary understandings of who he was and what he did. The less certain, but with some evidence, is that when Roman soldiers would go off to serve across the Roman Empire, they were not permitted to be married. They were to remain unmarried so that they did not have any romantic connections, so they would be able to fight for the empire. Presumably and historically / legendarily, Saint Valentine of Rome, the priest, would secretly marry people before they went off to war, because he believed that not only marriage was important, but for someone to have this connection, this romantic love connection before they go off to war, to have a loyalty to someone, was very important. This also started with kind of this idea of, well, if you were going to be married, if one of these soldiers was going to be married, this started this kind of early on stage of love letter writing, that the wife and the husband would write love letters back and forth to each other when in this case the male soldier was off to war. Saint Valentine himself legendarily wrote kind of uplifting letters of love and connection to people who were in prison. He is presumably known for healing a blind girl who was having struggles with blindness and being able to see the love of God. And he is currently in the Roman Catholic Church and the Lutheran Church and the Episcopal Church, and in some other churches, the patron saint of romantic love and marriage. And that
Can I stop you right there? Because there's an evolution to that. So by the Middle Ages, so we had the word Valentine, right? That existed before all of this. And then in the Middle Ages, Valentine came to be known as this Saint Valentine, celebrated in the West, the feast day, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, if you know anything about the Canterbury Tales, Geoffrey Chaucer, 14th century, this 14th century poet, this was the turning point. Up until here, Saint Valentine wasn't really associated strongly with romantic love.
No, it was.
This poetry really linked Saint Valentine and this feast to the idea of romantic love. And it transformed Valentine from a martyr to a symbol of love. That's where we really see this culturally kind of being not so much connected to just sainthood and Christianity, but now romantic love. And that's why it's very secular. You know? Yeah,
before the thing, Saint Valentine was mostly known for this idea of kind of connection to marriages. He did have that, which does have some romantic, connection, but really for marriages, for being martyred, and also for there is also a moderately strong legend that Saint Valentine of Rome also would go into how do I want to speak about this modernly? Go to enslaved women in particular, who were having to be sex workers, young women, older women, and he would take them from these places and give them a life where they wouldn't have to be sex workers any longer. There is a rather moderately strong connection to that.
Saint Valentine did that?
There's a connection to Saint Valentine having.
I do remember reading something about him in prostitution and so women.
Interesting.
Women
that were sold into sex enslavement or sex work or prostitution. There is, again, it's legend, but this idea of taking them out of these places, having them be able to have a connection to a real type of love connection, or just to not be abused. And many of those women then would be sent out in gladiator fights and they'd be slaughtered. So he was also saving them from being killed as well. So that's the legend there.
How much do we know about Saint Valentine that is like historically accurate, and how much is legend, or is it all very blurred at this point?
It's pretty blurred, but most of the connections, to marriages, the letter writing, the healing of the blind girl, the freedom of the enslaved women, is generally legendary. There's some historical evidence pointing to some of those things, but it's not like heavy historical evidence. What we do know, what is historical evidence is that there was this priest in the Western Church in Rome who became a saint, known as Saint Valentine of Rome, who died on February 14th in 269 AD, who was a priest and who was killed under Emperor Claudius II and stood up for the Christian faith that was being kind of renounced at that time in the 3rd century. Those things seem to be historically true.
Yeah. I find myself even more interested anymore in, like, I like to begin by parceling out what do we know is factually true and what is the story surrounding it that may or may not be factual. And then I like to ask, then I start to not really care about the difference and ask myself, like, I think about, like, okay, did Jesus really resurrect? Did Jesus really ascend? Those kinds of questions. Well, factually, we can tizzy that out and have the conversation. But then I start to ask myself, even if he didn't or did, if that doesn't matter, why did people feel the need to say that this happened? What were they trying to convey? And usually when you follow that question of, like, why is this the story? So even if Saint Valentine didn't factually, we don't have the evidence, like, did he go and free young sex workers and liberate them? Even if he didn't, what we do know is human beings at some point felt the need to put that into this legend because there was a need to liberate, because there was, like, you know what I mean? Like, why is that the story that we have and why has it persisted? Because
yes, and whether or
there's
not
truth in it somewhere.
Yeah, and whether or not there was direct connection to Saint Valentine of Rome with these general secret marriages. There is historical documentation that the Roman Empire put a ban on soldiers being married, and not being able to publicly be married, and that was kind of an edict. So we do know that was true. And we do know that people still wanted romantic connection and to be married, even though they were soldiers. And so it could be plausible that when and if Saint Valentine of Rome helped conspire to marry these people, that's not an unlikely situation. Do we have specifics of it? No, not so much. And again, you see that this real connection with romantic love and kind of the modern day Valentine's Day that we think about, again, comes from Geoffrey Chaucer's 1382 poem. I wrote this down. Parliament of Fowls. And he connects these things this idea of Valentine writing to the blind girl who needed to be healed, and he would sign the letters from your Valentine. We also know that people wrote letters, love letters, especially to people who were off at war. And whether St. Valentine of Rome encouraged that or not historically, I don't know. But I think most people would have embraced something or something similar to that. And so that's also, again, very plausible.
Yeah, I think you said this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, but one Emperor Claudius II, cruel Claudius, the reason soldiers weren't supposed to get married is because he believed they fought better.
Yeah.
Didn't have someone at home. Did you say that already?
Yeah, because he believed that romantic connection was a distraction.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing here, that like you're robbing somebody of the experience of this like commitment and love and loyalty because you want their loyalty. It always comes back to violence. You want them to fight better.
Yeah.
And it comes back to control, right? So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, really quick. So the point is St. Valentine's actions weren't just, I love romantic love, let me marry you. It was like, as always, a political statement. Like you and your soldiers, you're trying to control them because you want to conquer and you want violence. I'm going to do this because I actually think love is louder. It's a very Jesus-y thing to do.
Yeah, and it's also very important to be for our listeners to kind of wrap their mind around this too. That so Saint Valentine of Rome, who was then, and well, maybe not in the 3rd century, he would eventually become, but is now the patron saint of marriages and romantic love. Remember that this individual, that this saint, was living in the 3rd century in the Western Church, and priests, which he was, an ordained priest, they were also permitted to be married in the 3rd century. And so we don't know whether Valentine was married or not, but it was not. There was no universal mandatory celibacy for priests yet in the 3rd century in the Church of Rome. There were many married priests with children in the 3rd century that were serving the church, and so the idea that well, marriage really wasn't important and the priest didn't really have a lot to do. Valentine could have been married. We don't know if he was, but it wasn't uncommon for priests to be married in the 3rd century, also to have children and a wife. There's that connection as well, because many people think, well, he was a priest, he was in the Western Church, and therefore he would be celibate. Not necessarily at this time.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Love is resistance. There we go.
Yeah, love is resistance. And yeah. And you see, this is interesting. I don't want to make this like this is what you have to do to be a follower of Jesus or a Christian, because it's not. But in the early days of the Jesus movement and then the Christian church, even in the 3rd century here, the idea that Jesus, that God came to us in the person of Jesus and wanted that radically bad, a new way of being in the world, that heaven would come to earth. This idea that we see in a human person of Jesus of Nazareth, that this man, meaning Jesus, would go to the ultimate ends of this proclamation of God to be a world of love and not division, and to kind of put the empire by, that someone would be killed for that or martyred for that on their own accord. You see this very early on, some through persecution, but some also just standing up for the faith. That, and you also see this a similar thing. You see it with Jesus as a martyr who was killed by the state and murdered for wanting a different world. Um,
Yeah.
but you
Well,
hold on, and you also see this with Valentine, with Saint Valentine of Rome in the third century. This idea that love is stronger than death, that God's love is stronger than Claudius II, and unfortunately, people would be killed for this. That's not something that I think we want to necessarily aspire to or
yeah,
have.
I have a lot of it because we're talking about Valentine, Saint Valentine, who is a martyr for the faith. I have such conflicting ideas of martyrdom in
No, I know you do.
Christianity. I feel like so much of Christianity is about like better to die for the faith than to do the wrong thing, than to be part of empire. And here's where it's full stop for me is like, yes. And listen, I'm here for the Jesus story. I'm in it. I'm immersed. I'm not sure you can get more immersed than I am. However, Jesus wasn't a parent as far as we know. He was not
Right.
a parent. I feel like that complicates everything. And I feel like it's in so many ways, it's become such a patriarchal story of like, you go out and you're disciples and you go out and you can be a martyr and you can put yourself in harm's way and take up your own cross. I think that parenthood is kingdom work. I heard that phrase recently. And I love it.
I'm with you.
I
I'm with
think
you.
that there are other ways to do this work because and even in like very non-Christian circles or more like progressively political circles, like you need to go out, you need to protest, you need to put your body in front. A lot of my friends who are saying that, yes, beautiful, go do that. You're not a mother,
Right.
right? Not, and there's some people who are mothers, who are parents who are doing that, but like I'm going to protect my body. I'm not going to put it in harm's way because that means my children are now in harm's way because they're going to grow up without a parent. Or even if it's just for the night, you go and protest, you get arrested or something goes wrong and you're gone for the night. I don't ever want my children to think their mother's coming home and they don't. What traumatic, you know what I mean? The
I'm
martyr narratives are tricky because sometimes in Christianity, it's just put on this pedestal like this is how you do faith. You must have a cross to bear and there must be suffering and there must be prosecution and that is not my experience of Christianity. And I know that that can be, I'm not saying that's not real, but that's not
yeah.
the only way Christianity shows up. That's not the only way to do
Totally.
work. That's not the
And
only way to follow Jesus. You do not have to take up your cross. You can also love people. You can also be a mother. You can be a father. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with what you mean. And you see this in other religions too, not just martyrdom, but you see it in other religions too, where some people would say, well, the only way. Some people think, like you just said, the only way to be a Christian is to, well, at all costs, be a martyr. Well, that's one of the ways, I guess. But even in other religions, the idea is you're to go off on your own, and you're to experience the fullness of illumination. You're to go up to the mountaintop and never come back and reach nirvana or reach enlightenment or whatever. You're not supposed to suffer at all, and I don't know. I don't know if that's the only way of doing life in those other faiths as well. I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
speak.
Well, and you touched on suffering, which is connected to martyrdom too. And I feel like hang with me because this is nuanced and I know that there is real suffering, but I just see around me a lot of Christians that create their own suffering with like, oh, it's my cross to bear. The electric bill was high this month when I full well know you have plenty of money to pay your electric bill. You know what I mean? Of like, oh, like you're creating suffering where there isn't any because you've been handed a story where you think you have to suffer to be a good Christian. And this is where I think Black Christianity has done it well because Black history in this country specifically is one of deep suffering. And what did they do? They flipped it on their head. If you ever listen to Black spiritual music, it is upbeat, baby. It's like you're moving your body. And there's something Black joy is a real thing. There's just like this Black vocal joy about that community. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think
Where like
about that.
you
I
can
think,
have joy, you can be happy and be a Christian is my whole point. You don't have to be a martyr for the faith. Most of us won't be, by the way. Most of us won't be.
I think it's, yeah, I think it's good to hold it. But I think of the hymn or the spiritual song, "There is a balm in Gilead."
Mm-hmm.
So that whole hymn is saying, yeah, life's pretty rough. It's pretty rough and it's broken. I'm broken. The world's broken. Uh, but God doesn't. God gives us another way, and there's a healing balm in Gilead, and to make the wounded whole. There, so it's not about, well, just going to the death. It's about resurrection. It's about healing. It's about restoration.
Right.
It's about not um, not staying in that place.
The happiest, like, and I don't mean like faking it happy. I don't mean optimistic. I just mean people who are in on the joke and hold life lightly and they're happy. They're quick to laugh. They're quick to break out in laughter. They're not serious. They get that like there's something kind of humorous happening here. They have gone into the suffering. They have
Mm-hmm.
experienced, like I'm just thinking of a handful of people I know that I'm like, they're just joyful. There's some, and they're joyful to be around. And I think joy is different than happiness. There's a depth to it. They haven't just seen suffering. They have faced it head on. They've gone into it and through it and come out the other side, and there's joy there. I think
I
that's
think
the thing that dominant Christianity is often missing. We just talk about the suffering and the cross, and oftentimes we forget, but there was a resurrection. You go through, you descend the depths, but then you come out, and it's actually better than it was. It doesn't mean you ignore the suffering. It means you have your, I think of Richard Rohr, you have your arms, everything belongs, you have your arms wrapped around all of it. So whenever suffering does come, you see it, but there's a deep essence in you that can still experience the joy. It's the wedding during concentration camp kind of story of like it's awful and it's terrible, and still there's moments cracking through.
yeah, yeah. Whether or not it's whether or not it's historically true, it's at least legendarily true. If I can put those
Yeah.
two things together, um, the idea that Saint Valentine of Rome was perhaps secretly marrying people. Rome was expanding, violence was expanding, war was always at the tippy top and at the forefront of people's destruction and all this type of thing. So the idea that you would unite yourself with somebody else through connection and love to begin something new, to kind of have a new life, a new resurrection by by um, by committing yourself in love to this other person. Marriage, at least at its best, is to bring newness and new life to two different people. So Saint Valentine of Rome was in the midst of this war and violence and darkness and empire, was perhaps providing a way for a new way of life, right? I think of also in letter writing. Sure, you can get mail or letters that give you bad news. I'm not saying that you can't. Obviously, you do. Sometimes you do. But there's something about getting a letter in the mail and hearing that the person is still alive, that they're still going. It gives you hope. It gives you new life to receive a letter. And even in that, you see that there is, in kind of this whole idea of a Valentine or writing one a Valentine now through cards or letters, but you see it gives people hope that they're loved, that life is.
Yeah. Well, to come full circle, in my literature classes, I begin day one. I show them, the movie Dead Poet Society
Yeah,
with Robin Williams.
yeah,
I show them the scene, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially he says, um, we're human beings, and the pursuit of medicine and mathematics, and okay, those are all great, and they're noble pursuits, is what he says. They're noble
yeah,
pursuits, but we don't stay alive for our taxes and to do accounting. We like the reason we live is because of love, romance, poetry, literature. These are the things we stay alive for, is love, romance, all of that beautiful stuff, right? And I know that people can love accounting. I know that, but you know what I'm saying, right? Is like, those are the logistics of living, but it's not why we live. Like, we need these things, but that's not why we wake up in the morning. We wake up in the, I mean, there's something when you have kids, there's something so sweet about when our girls wake up before us and they come and they crawl on our bed. So stinking sweet. Or if you've ever been around children on like Christmas morning and you're downstairs and their little feet come down the steps on Christmas morning, that's what you wake up excited for. You're not like, ooh, another day where I get to go grocery shopping, right? You might not mind
Like
it. You
waking
might
up.
look forward to it, but you don't stay alive for those things.
Right. I hope the poor accountants that are listening to us don't get upset, but I don't know of too many people, at least in my circles, and maybe that's the issue, but that wake up and think like, I'm just so excited for my spreadsheet. I mean,
Right.
I just
Well,
don't.
also like medicine too is right. Like, yeah, noble pursuits. Yeah. But that's not the innate thing that we're like, yeah, yeah, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stay curious.
So stay curious.
To understand